Before we start the meeting this evening, I'd have a statement I would like to read. In light of Monday's tragic events at East High, I wanted to take a moment this evening to share a brief statement on behalf of the board. Our hearts are with the families whose lives have been forever impacted as a result of Monday's tragedy. This board and our entire community stand in solidarity with East High Scarlets as reflected by the thousands of people in our community who showed up in their red. As we reflect and prepare to move beyond this tragedy, we will do so with an understanding that Scarlet Nation is resilient and strong. In closing, please allow me to share a verse from the East High Fight song. Dear East High, you are the school for me. You will always win the victory. Red and black to you will be true, and we will be great, and we will bring great honor to you.
A la luz de los trágicos acontecimientos del lunes en East High School, quería tomarme un momento esta noche para compartir una breve declaración en nombre de la Junta Directiva. Nuestros corazones están con las familias cuyas vidas se han visto afectadas para siempre como resultado de la tragedia del lunes. Esta Junta y toda nuestra comunidad se solidariza con los East High Scarlets, como lo reflejan las miles de personas de nuestra comunidad que se presentaron en su rojo. Mientras reflexionamos y nos preparamos para ir más allá de esta tragedia, lo haremos con el entendimiento de que la nación escarlata es resistente y fuerte. Para terminar, permítanme compartir un verso de la canción de lucha de East High. Querida East High, tú eres la escuela para mí. Siempre ganarás la victoria. Rojo y negro, para ti seremos fieles y te traeremos un gran honor.
We will now pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. I would like to call the special school board meeting for Thursday, March 10th, 2022 for the Des Moines Public Schools to order. Ms. Rivera, could you please take the roll?
Ms. Alonso Diaz,
Here.
Ms. Bradley,
Here.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson, Ms. Knox,
Here.
Ms. Martorano,
Here.
Ms. Norris, absent, Ms. Sawyer,
Here.
The first item of business is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Martorano, so moved.
Sawyer, second.
We have a motion by Ms. Martorano and a second by Ms. Sawyer. Ms. Rivera, could you please take the vote?
Ms. Alonso Diaz,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Martorano,
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
The vote is approved 6-0. The only item on our agenda this evening is the award of contract for DMPS Community Stadium at Drake University. We allow any person the opportunity to speak to the board for up to 5 minutes following the presentation of an agenda item. If anyone wishes to speak to an agenda item, please email rosa.rivera-hernandez@dmschools.org. Remarks must be germane to the agenda, and we ask that you would avoid reference to personalities and character attacks, as those types of comments serve no productive purpose. We appreciate your input. As a reminder to the board and public, the board will not engage in discussion or deliberation with the speaker regarding comments made to agenda items. Discussion and deliberation will remain among board members at the board table, with speakers' comments informing said discussion, deliberation, and determination as deemed necessary. Speakers will be called individually, and we ask that they please state their name and address prior to providing comments. Students and minors do not have to provide their addresses. Ms. Rivera, do we have any speakers this evening?
Yes, we do. First speaker up is Sharon West. She's attending virtually.
I'm here.
Thank you.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Thank you very much. My name is Sharon West. I live at 2926 Deer Path Court, Des Moines, Iowa, 50320. I have a child in Brody Middle School who will be attending Lincoln High School next fall. I wanted to talk about the student and parent side of the proposed community stadium versus the financial side. Currently, we have a significant bus driver shortage. This shortage has already caused athletes to be late to games, including junior high games. If the community stadium goes forward, our teams will have to be bused to the community stadium. The cheerleaders and the band will also have to be bused to the community stadium. By adding more need for bus drivers and bus services, we're not being student friendly at this point. Additionally, students who want to attend the games cannot walk to the stadium. Right now, the stadiums are centrally located in the neighborhoods in which the schools are located. Students who don't have the ability to drive are able to walk to the stadiums or get a ride and easily get there to support their team. Next, there is only 2,000 seats in the proposed stadium. All the seats are on the same side. That means that there won't be designated student seating for each high school attending and enough room for the crowd. If you go to any of the high school stadiums that are currently being used, you'll feel energy by going to that student section. You'll see the community that they have and the camaraderie that that brings. There's an additional problem with parking availability over at the Drake Stadium. When you have two schools that come together like that, you need ample parking. That stadium does not allow for ample parking for the amount of people going over there who need to drive over and can't just walk over from their neighborhood homes. All that will cause decreased attendance at high school football games, which will also decrease the boosters' opportunity to raise funds. It'll also decrease the amount of cheer, football, and band clinics with performances that the students can have who are feeder schools up to that high school. My daughter has been in cheer clinics from the time she was in kindergarten. They come to Lincoln, they learn the cheers, and then they walk over together with the cheerleaders and cheer at the stadium. There will be no bus money for those clinics. There's no tradition in the community stadium either. When we were children, we came to Lincoln for games. When my husband's mother was a child, she came to Lincoln for games. There's tradition here. We've played here. We're a family here. This community stadium has caused emails, petitions, and even a court case to try to stop this. I'm surprised that with all of this, with all of this force to try to stop it, that it's still an agenda item and it's still going forward. Is it still the right thing? I ask you guys to really think about it and to delay any votes. The reason why I want you to delay votes is because I want you to go to games this fall. I want you to go to each stadium and feel the vibe that's there. I want you to set up a table and talk to parents, talk to community members, talk to the players, the coaches, the band members, and the students. I want you to really get a feel for what's going on and what these stadiums mean to our community. Additionally, the community needs to know that this is
1
happening.
minute remaining.
We have a lack of awareness that the stadiums will be combined into one community stadium. We need full transparency that this is happening. We are small communities inside one large community, and our stadium is the heart of our small community. Please don't take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dan Pardock in the building.
Do I need to use this microphone or just talk just like this? Okay. Do we not have the ability to hear people on teams in the room?
Wonder if
Okay, all right, because it was complete silence for the last speaker, so I didn't realize that. Okay, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I wish it was under better circumstances for many reasons. I usually have a nice speech all written out and rehearsed and timed, but I didn't have the ability to do that tonight because I just found out about this meeting during my lunch break today. So I have bullet points and I'm going to talk ad lib. So I hope you can put up with me on this. The timing of this meeting is incredibly bad optics. The special session called for the Thursday night before spring break is not a good look. If the board is confident this is the right decision, why not yell it from the tallest building in Des Moines and invite everybody to come here? It just looks bad. I reached out to both KCCI and the Register, and both had no idea this meeting was even happening. I reached out to activities directors if they knew what was going on, and I know at least 2 didn't even know this meeting was being held. It's a slap in the face right now to vote yes on this for the 7,000 people, over 7,000 people that signed a petition asking for a public vote to be held to spend $15 million in SAFE funds for this project. If this goes forward, you're not listening to the people and you're not being good stewards of tax money. There's still so many questions unanswered. Now, first of all, what do you do? I mean, it's in the courts right now. What do you do if the Supreme Court comes back and says you've got to hold a vote to get this $15 million out? You hold a vote, it comes back and says, no, people of this district don't want you to spend $15 million. Where's that money going to come from? How are you going to pay it back? You're going to have to repay those SAFE funds. Now the project is even more over budget. Extra $2 million, I just found out a few seconds ago, is coming from Drake. Now we're even more beholden to Drake with that extra $2 million in the project. I've done it. How many of you have reached out to all the football coaches, the soccer coaches, the marching band directors, the cheerleading coaches, all the volunteers who help with these organizations? Have you asked them how they feel about this? Because I have. It's rough to hear from them. Many of them signed the petition. We've got 4,200 people, 4,200 plus people on the Facebook group. They're members of that. Maybe they've done both. They've signed the petition and they're members of the Facebook group. The now former Lincoln head football coach is on record saying he'd rather play in the parking lot of a miniature golf course than have the team and its fans travel across town to the stadium. And I stress now former Lincoln head football coach. Where is it in the budget to cover transportation for all these student athletes? The programs are already underfunded as it is, and now the board is looking at saddling them with increased transportation costs. I guarantee you the savings of not renting Drake Stadium is not going to cover it. I've talked to especially the Hoover band director about this, and he's, he just doesn't know where the money's coming from. We can't get bus drivers now as it is, and now we're going to have them all come on Friday night and gather all these students and student athletes and take them to the stadium. The vision of the board, I'm sure, is to create an attractive district and draw families to Des Moines, and this is not going to do it. I'm very fortunate that my daughter graduated last year, and she got to play soccer and perform as drum major on her home field at Hoover. And I guarantee you, after the stadium is completed, families looking to move to this area are not going to choose a district where their children have to get on a bus to go to their home stadium. There was a recent DMPS story about the return of Hoover football, a team that I played on. And it ended with, the lights are going to be shining on Friday nights at McGrain Stadium. If the board has its way, those Friday night lights won't be on for very long. And here's my final question. North Stadium is named after the Grubb family. Hoover is fortunate to have the McGrain and McClanahan names looking down on its stadium. At the community meeting at North more than 2 years ago, a parent asked Superintendent Ahart if he was going to reach out to those families for their input and see what they had to say. I wonder if that conversation ever happened, and I wonder if those families, or what their response was. Do the right thing, listen to the vast majority of people who do not want this stadium, and please don't let this continue. Thank you.
Yeah, because they want to put the extra money. Put it on there. Make your own freaking stadium. Maybe I could tie this into the.
Okay, I would advise to please mute if you are on the call so that we may allow the other speakers to speak. Next up, we have Kirk Twelmeyer attending virtually. You may unmute.
Hi, this is Kirk. Can you hear me? All right. I want to, I'm obviously opposed to the stadium, but I'm a little curious now hearing Dan Parduk mention $2 million is going to be pumped in by Drake to help support the stadium. One thing that's interesting is one piece of dollars that doesn't show up on anything is $620,000 for site work back in October. You add that to the $1 million plus other fees, and left out of the original 15.8 million, there's 13.6 million left to spend on this stadium. So that's actually 3.4, almost $3.4 million needed. So with the additional two, you're still 1.4 million short, and that doesn't cover the bid for flooring and roofing. I'd like to know the answers to these questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Susan Skieries. If you're attending virtually, please unmute. Okay, we'll move on to the next speaker. I have Tyler Painter in the room. Please proceed.
Just name and address.
Name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Tyler Painter. My address is 2624 Merle Height Road. I work at Hoover High School teaching orchestra lessons. And I found out it was in the afternoon, so I'm also lacking preparedness, but I'll try to keep it concise and brief. My main 3 points in being here to speak, because I felt like it was important, is I've had several students speak to me about things about the project, including the way that the board has gone about handling it, the different financial aspects. Many of these students, athletes, and most of them, if not all, were confused and opposed because they want to play at their school in their own stadium. My first point. The second, and I think important thing, which is more of a consideration for the board to take now as your time with the current superintendent is ending, is that you have an opportunity now to regroup with the new superintendent and perhaps focus energies and priorities in different ways. Because right now, though the students who have talked to me are not representative of every student in the district. I only work at one school and I only see so many students. I acknowledge that. Many community members are obviously being lost in all of this. You have the opportunity to regroup, maybe come together with more students to get their input as to what they would like to see happen at their school, since the project is for them. Right? I don't think any of you would disagree with that. This shouldn't be for Drake. It should be for students at DMPS. And bringing in community members to support a project. I don't think most people would come here and say, oh, how dare you go back on this project that you've spent time on now. I think there would be many people who'd be grateful if you took a step back, reevaluated, and then said, let's try to do something that everybody can support in our city, in our schools, parents, alumni, students. So, now we can't debate or ask any questions, but I just ask you to consider this as you look at what's on the agenda today and as you move forward from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the speakers that we have. Mr. Hadley.
Thank you all for speaking this evening and addressing the board. I'm hearing that we have no more speakers. Superintendent Ahart, before I turn things over to you to have the conversation and the presentation that we'll be having about the stadium, we will be keeping this conversation to about 30 minutes. I know that the presentation that Dave and Jason have is pretty short, and that will allow the board some time to ask any more clarifying questions that you may need to ask. So Superintendent Ahart, would you please introduce the matter?
Yes, thank you, Chair Bradley. Um, Dave Berger, our Executive Director of Operations, and Jason Allen, our Director of Student Activities, are here to share a presentation that we've put together to try to summarize exactly where we are right now after obviously what's been a very long journey with COVID thrown in the mix, to kind of extend the project even further. And I believe the content of the presentation also corrects some misconceptions, some of which were shared in our public forum commentary tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to to Dave and Jason.
Wow, there. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can. Okay. I'm Dave Berger, Executive Director of Operations.
Can't hear you as well now.
Oh, is that any better?
Got really muffled.
Let's see here. No, I forgot.
There you go. Thank you.
I do not. I do not.
I can hear you clearly, though.
You can hear me. All right. Here. So I'm going to go ahead and sit in front of Jason's computer.
Okay, yeah, I think so.
From Jason's machine. Return to your camera on. Okay. How's that? Is that better? Okay. Sorry about that. Again, I'm Dave Berger, Executive Director of Operations here at Des Moines Schools. Appreciate the opportunity to come in front of you today and talk a little bit about where the community stadium project is at and some of the initiatives that that have been discussed in terms of sort of moving forward the concept of activities with throughout the district here. I think one of the key things that we really want to stress tonight is the fact that the community stadium, I think, has been presented from day one really as part of a larger continuing effort to provide an additional layer or level of service for activities and athletics for district students. This is what we really see as one step to continue to move that forward. I'm just going to go ahead and cover a little bit of the information specifically related to the particulars of the construction and the scope of the project. This slide here has been prepared to provide a little bit of information on what was included in each of the bid packages or larger bid packages with this particular project. So the last time that we bid this project, we bid this with a base bid and a series of alternates. The base bid is what is identified in the larger blue square around the entire campus. That includes all of the west side development. It includes 2,000 seats over on what we would consider the home side of the stadium, all of the restrooms and concession areas for the west side of the stadium, as well as obviously the playing field and some of the perimeter developments. Alternates 1 and 2 were not used in that they were actually, those conventions were utilized in previous bid packages. So we disregarded those. Alternate number 3 was to include, or does include, a digital ribbon board that runs along the face of the west grandstands. It's a moving digital display. It's part of the kind of some of that wow factor that had been discussed from day one with the project, and has a variety of different uses, variety of different applications, and brings sort of a more exciting, potentially more exciting experience for fans and athletes. Alternate number 4 resolves the issue of how do we get to 4,000 seats? When this project was initially presented to the public, it was indicated that we would have a stadium with 4,000 seats. Alternate number 4 addresses the additional 2,000 seats on the east side of the stadium. It also takes care of all of the east side development that would include restrooms, concessions, and any of those amenities and fixtures that would go along with that. Alternate number 5 is up in the sort of northwest corner of the property. That's what we have sort of referred to as the training complex or the training building. That is where Drake would house their soccer locker rooms. There are some training facilities within that, a film room, and some other spaces that would be, there's some spaces in there that would be dedicated specifically for Drake use. There would be some spaces in there that are shared for both programs. Hopefully you can see this here. Running through, just want to provide kind of a high level understanding of where we're at from a budgetary standpoint. So from a budget summary, the project was established with an initial budget of $19.5 million. So that included a $15 million contribution by Des Moines Public Schools, a $4.5 million contribution by Drake. On top of that, well, it's not necessarily wrapped up into this number here. Drake will also be taking care of the day-to-day maintenance and operation of the facility, as well as they did provide the real property on which the stadium would be built, which is about a $2.5 million property. So if we start with that $19.5 million budget, and then if we look at where we are at with front-end construction costs that are right at about $3.9 million. And then on top of that, we also include a $400,000 contingency, which gives us the ability to adapt for potential unknown conditions that might arise throughout the course of the project. That takes us to a point where we are looking at operating from about a $15.2 million construction budget. If we then turn around and look at the bid summary, we're right at about $15.3 million for the base bid as it was received in the last bid opening. Alternate number 3 was right at about $315,000. Alternate number 4 for that east side development, right at about $1.8 million. Alternate number 5, we don't have the dollars shown here. It was a little bit over $2 million on bid day. Alternate number 5 is not being presented for consideration at this point. Drake University has indicated that they have every intention to move forward with that at some point in the future. However, at this point, the larger concern is getting the project whole in terms of 4,000 seats and being able to provide the home and visitor amenities and all of that. So that's where we end up with a total construction cost approximately of about $17.4 million. So if we then drop down here to the funding summary, we take that dollar amount, we take the $15.2 million construction budget. We've gone ahead and included about $600,000 in here for potential design changes that our design team and construction manager have identified as sort of post-bid day opportunities where they've identified some materials and methods that we would work with vendors to be able to potentially find some additional costs there. We have also, the board has indicated that there would be $500,000 in funding that was presented in the form of a donation by Prairie Meadows that would be applied towards the project. And that's where we end up with a funding gap identified at just a little bit over $1 million, about $1.1 million for the identified funding gap there. I'm going to talk just a little bit here about some of the funding and cost considerations. One of the things that we just have been noting and have been, taking note of throughout this entire process, we all know that prices are skyrocketing. Inflation is real. Just for a point of reference, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, based off CPI, indicates that the inflation rate from November 2019, when the project was first released to the public, until January of 2022, inflation was right about 9.3%. So on top of that initial $15 million investment by the district, that's about $1.39 million. Funding considerations, there obviously is a gap here, and it's a gap that the board would need to decide on how best to move forward and cover. One of the things that we would note is in light of the pandemic, the district did receive a number of funds in the form of ESSER dollars for utilization in projects such as mechanical and ventilation improvements in facilities. What the district was able to do was we already had a lot of mechanical and ventilation projects that were scheduled to be funded with SAVE dollars over this the current 5-year capital improvement plan that we're in. We're in year 2 right now. So we were actually able to go ahead and offset some of those SAVE expenditures with ESSER dollars. So we have some SAVE dollars that were not utilized because of that injection of the ESSER funds. Another thing, just purely for note, is in years 4 and 5 of the current 5-year SAVE plan, we do have $5 million in each of those years that are technically unallocated. We have them earmarked for potential building additions, things like that. At this point, we don't have anything identified, but we wanted to make sure that we had those dollars placed into the budget so that we had that sort of cushion, so to speak. Those are there for consideration, not just for funding gap here, but also for consideration of other activities, improvements. That sort of goes into this next note here. The revenue purpose statement for the district was updated here just not too long ago and approved by the voters. That does give the board and the district a little bit more flexibility in terms of making decisions on how SAVE dollars could be utilized for athletic and activity improvements across the district. And then finally, some of the other things that we would like to emphasize really throughout the move forward on activities improvements and athletic improvements is trying to find some of those offset funding opportunities, whether it's grants, whether it's working with municipal organizations, private donations like booster clubs, or just private individuals, but to look at some of those as potential opportunities to be able to offset some of that funding. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jason Allen here, and Jason can talk a little bit more about activities.
Thank you, Dave. Again, my name is Jason Allen. I'm the Director of District Activities and Community Education. While we are focusing on the DMPS Community Stadium, I think it's important to note that there's been other initiatives at the same time that's been running through the efforts and recommendations of our AFC committee, through the efforts of our buildings in general, and also through their stakeholders, which has allowed us to actually to make substantial improvements, to our current athletic facilities. In May of 2020, the board created the AFC committee as an ad hoc committee, and for the purpose of really 3 things. One, to review the current state of our athletic facilities and determine what the needs are. Secondary to that was to then determine a plan for how we're going to support the development and/or improvement. And then finally, to then make a recommendation based off of that research to the board to then act upon. That committee included both our student voice, it included staff in the buildings. In addition to that, it also included stakeholders who were connected directly to the community for those schools. And so what happened as a result of those conversations, and again, as a collaborative effort with all of these, all these partners, and I just want to go over just kind of a few things that's been completed. There's been a new football scoreboard that's been done over at East High School. included in that. There's been new concession stands for both baseball and softball. Hoover, they renovated the locker rooms, which actually provided greater access for students. In addition to that, they added more batting and cages for both softball and baseball. In addition to that, there was bleachers that was also included. In Lincoln High School, now they do have what we call a wrestling complex, which essentially allows them not only to operate for their current teams, but also to add more feeder programs. They renovated the weight room, which allows for more robust strength and conditioning programs. And they also, at Lincoln, added more baseball and softball bleachers, which is that complex is located at Kurtz. At North, we created a dedicated wrestling space. Prior to that, they were essentially using an open space that was not fully designed for that purpose. They renovated the weight room. And in addition to that, we've added baseball batting cages. But Roosevelt, there was a new gymnasium floor that was created. We added additional secure storage in the lower levels for all of the programs. And through those partnerships, we also were able to upgrade the gymnasium scoreboard. So what are we working on now? Fortunately, there's been numerous planned improvements. One being that adding some additional lighting to the Williams Stadium, also upgrading the baseball and softball dugouts, as well as the press boxes over at East. At Hoover High School, you'll notice there's a lot of lighting projects here. Adding more lighting to both the baseball and the softball fields, as well as resurfacing the track and or looking at the potential of replacements based off of what we learn once we get in there. At Lincoln, the plan is to update the lighting over at the Kurtz building, where that's where our softball program is located, as well as looking at what our options may be for resurfacing and or replacing our track. North High School, the plan is in the main gymnasium on the west side to add a multi-sport conditioning space in the top part of the floor, which will also include adding some indoor baseball and softball batting cages that actually can be lowered, in addition to adding a softball press box. And then, of course, over at Roosevelt, we'll be working on doing some resurfacing and replacement of the track while adding a multi-use synthetic turf practice field. And in addition to that, adding some accessibility renovations to our swimming pools, which would allow our spectators to have more access to being a part of that. So all of the completed facility upgrades occurred during the time of the pandemic. And that was about $4.5 million. What we currently have in progress is around about $4.8 million. And what we have planned, currently, which is scheduled to be done, completed around 2025, is about $4.1 million for a total of $13.4 million. I think the one thing that's important to really note here is that none of what we're doing is done in isolation. It is working in collaboration with our community partners. It's working in collaboration with our buildings. It's working in collaboration with our alumni. And so those relationships are important. Every building has building level initiatives that they tackle, and that's a wonderful thing. And so having our foundations and or booster clubs, part of that helps to make those dreams turn into realities. It's also important that we have our private and public relationships, and we've been fortunate to have some really good ones, with our higher ed community that is mutually beneficial to both their needs as well as our needs. And that's through our partnership with Grandview University, and of course, through what we're doing now with Drake University. And finally, it's important that we continue to nurture, to maximize, to leverage our business sector partners who are located in our community and who also have who also have kids who are attending our schools. That's all wrapped into what we're doing as a district which is continuing ongoing commitments to find ways to leverage dollars creatively in order to upgrade and provide opportunities for our kids through these facilities. And so, what questions or discussions do you have?
I don't know if it's on. I think you might have to hit,
Which go to display. Set in the display.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Barely? Okay. It's gonna give me feedback. Couple questions. On page slide 5, I think it was, you talk about offset funding. That's distracting. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Is there feedback? No. Okay, no. Okay, thank you. So on slide 5, you talk about potential offset funding. Is there a plan? Have you talked about that? Is that built? Like, what are you expecting? How will that process work?
Would you on your presentation maybe go to page 5 or slide 5?
You want to address that, Jane, or do you want me to talk about it? So as far as the offset funding, there's not a specific, this is who we're going to talk to, this is who we're going to go to for this, that, or the other thing. Grant opportunities, there are a number of things that we have the ability to pursue both as a district and then also some of our at the programmatic level. There are also grant opportunities for some of the programs, be it say a softball program at high school X or a football program at high school Y. There are a variety of different things there. And I think the objective with that is we would certainly want to engage district staff that maybe that's sort of their wheelhouse. That's what they do, to get them engaged to, one, help identify some of those grant opportunities, as well as be able to help execute on applications and preparing proposals and things like that. Our understanding, and I can only speak from my experience, I think that there's maybe a little bit of there's been a little bit of a vacuum in that arena, and perhaps there are more things that we could be pursuing and we could be helping our buildings to pursue in terms of that type of funding. In terms of municipal contributions, I think that that's one of those things where it's always good to be in communication with those that that we share our community with, and so that's one of those things I think we would just certainly be encouraging, again, whether it's at the building level or at a district programmatic level, that we're looking for opportunities there. And the private donations, again, that's we sort of see all of these as the next step. These are some things that maybe have been pursued as potential funding opportunities on a smaller scale or a very local scale. The thought is, what about taking that a little bit bigger? What about thinking bigger with it and looking for some of those opportunities? So do we have specific things called out? I would say no, probably not. But we certainly have things identified and certainly have programs identified that would be potential sources of those.
I would just add to that there's a couple of conversations that are.
Hold on, Tom. I think
Oh,
Jason
sorry.
was talking, so hold on. I don't know who wants to go first.
Go ahead, Tom.
No, go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
We've not fully leveraged the opportunities that come with the business community to work in collaboration on. Now you can hear me?
Now.
All right. All right. Thank you. No, what I was suggesting is that, you know, we truly believe there's an opportunity to leverage our business community and to do it at a much, you know, higher rate. I think many of them are interested in providing some levels of support, but they would rather potentially do that instead of doing it on smaller levels with a number of different things. It's maybe on larger scales. And so I think those are some things that I really do believe that we can pursue, specifically as we look forward, as Dave mentioned, on a more long-term basis.
Yeah, and there are a couple of conversations going on right now that haven't yielded anything specific, but that I'm encouraged about to cover a decent piece of what the current the current gap is. But I don't have anything that I can promise at this particular moment.
Thank you. I have one more question, which is, Jason, you talked about bringing the community together and talking about projects within the building. So as you presented to us what has been done, what's projected to be done, how were the ADs in the buildings brought into those projects, and how were others in the building brought in to decide what were priorities within those buildings?
I appreciate you asking that question. When we formulated the Athletic Facilities Committee, the athletic directors were directly involved, all 5 of them, in addition to building staff and as well as our community supports. Creating the athletic facilities matrix was a direct result of the information that they had and what they felt like needed to be prioritized. And so numerous hours, working with that group to determine, based off of what we know, trying to take more of an approach to not just one individual building, but 5 buildings. What makes the most sense. We looked at costs. We looked at value for our students, safety, compliance. What does a high quality facility look like? The ability to host not only our events, but other events. And so our ADs were absolutely directly involved and we actually appreciate their efforts.
We have about 7 more minutes for questions, so continue with any questions that you may have for our presenters this evening.
I'm curious, and I believe that this is probably a question for Tom. It's hard to have this conversation before our budget conversation, particularly when we're being asked to approve such a large expenditure. So I think that we're putting the cart a little bit before the horse. So I'm curious to know how this project or budget expenditure aligns with us achieving our goals while honoring our guardrails. I'm also curious to know, with the shifting of funds from SAVE to ESSER, that's a pretty big shift. And one of the questions I had on our budgetary questions was with regards to shifting kind of some of those HVAC things. Could those things be shifted to SAVE so that we had more money in ESSER to be able to spend on actual student impact and classroom impact when it comes to achieving our goals? So if you could speak to how you believe this project and expenditure aligns with our goals while honoring our guardrails, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, so with regards to the ESSER dollars and what what's been expended for facilities and what had been initially intended to be spent on facilities in our in our initial budgeting, that has been reduced significantly. And Dave, if you want to fill in some details there, feel free to jump in. The broader picture, though, I think, is that when we look at and the Athletic Facilities Committee, I think, laid this out with quite explicit detail. There are tremendous needs in our athletic facilities, campus to campus to campus, with really no way to address all of those at the level that I think we all would expect. And so, as Jason shared, we've spent just on those. If you look at those list of items that have been addressed so far and will be addressed in this 5-year plan, none of those are particularly, big items, but they all add up to over $13 million. And it'll probably be north of that by the time we get to 25 if the inflation rate stays at the pace that it is. And so what this allows us to do is to have a competition facility and our only regulation soccer facility in the district without dipping into general fund for ongoing maintenance, which Drake will be responsible for. That's something that I think we all understand, but we don't really appreciate what that will help us with moving forward. It also then allows us to look at some of the greatest needs on our campuses. A lot of that, I would highlight Hoover and Lincoln on this. When we have a plot of land for instance, the football field that's natural turf, we can't use that very much and keep it in competition condition. It's just not doable with natural turf. If we know that we can free up that space and configure it to better provide opportunities for all of our sports, including soccer, which is our fastest growing sport, we can reconceive of every site and really put dollars towards the needs that we have to continue to engage a larger number of students in a whole host of activities, which right now we're just really squeezed for. When we look at bringing our individual stadiums up to something that approaches the level of the new of this proposed new stadium, the costs are way more than the cost for this stadium, way more. And in fact, in some cases, probably would be ill-advised even if we had the dollars. So what this does, I think, is help us think more strategically at the district level, which is a really difficult step for the community to make. I understand that, but if you think of, for instance, Central Campus and Central Academy, we have some really extraordinary programs at those sites that serves the entire district. We can't afford to replicate each of those programs at each of our schools. And so that's really kind of the model that we're talking about. Let's provide access, broad access across the district to really high quality experiences, no barriers to access, and have high quality facilities to practice, train, and compete in. And so I think it directly supports at a real foundational level what the board wants to accomplish with engagement of our students, and keeping pace with what we know they would experience if they were somewhere else in a different district.
So I have another question. You just talked about barriers to access, and I know one of the barriers that I heard from the colleagues I talked to at North was about transportation and getting to the stadium. So sorry not to direct it only at you, Superintendent Ahart, but if anyone could speak about the plans for busing and transporting our students and fans. I know at North, a lot of times after school, they do a grill out, in the parking lot, and everyone walks across the street to go to the games and have that experience. I assume we've thought through that. Can you share a little bit about the plans for that accessibility and alleviating those barriers for participation?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Jason, you can fill in gaps.
Yeah, first of all, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Jason.
First of all, we acknowledge there are some challenges. There's been challenges this year, but I'm pretty confident based off of what we've been working through, and which is looking at how do we continue to leverage the current ways that we're utilizing transportation, and looking at how we can maybe even more so, take advantage of our vans that we have that are currently available as other measures to provide supports, and thinking creatively around how we maximize our community supports. This is one of the real opportunities for us, so that we do not create a barrier to access, but become more innovative around different options, so that we can, realize for all of our students the real potential of being able to participate over at the new DMPS Community Stadium.
Yeah, we did talk through, because that was one of the first, the first potential barriers to having a centralized stadium was transportation, because now instead of traveling for away games, some of our teams will be traveling for home games, like Roosevelt does already. And so we do know that there's an additional need there. There is some dollars that we're saving through our relationship with Drake, that will pay for some of that. Not all of it, but a very good share of it. And then the other piece is we're working on some creative solutions to the the current driver shortage issue, not specific to this, but that will help serve this particular challenge as well.
We are a little bit over time, but I also want to make sure that Ms. Caldwell Johnson or Ms. Alonso, if you had any questions, I want to make sure you're able to answer those ask those, as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think that, tonight we heard clearly strong messages from the community that are not in support of the stadium, and athletes in our district that are not willing to, that would prefer to play in their home stadium. Can any of you maybe speak to how you will handle maybe that pushback, or is there a plan? If there's a school that prefers to stay at their school, can they do that? What's the plan? Lo siento. I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Did you hear me okay? Yes? Okay, I am so sorry. I was fidgeting with the other. I should put it on, right? Yes, I'm sorry. My apologies. Thanks for telling me when I was done. Sure. Do I need to repeat the questions here? I'll run them.
Repeat it.
I think I will. I think I will. Yes, thank you. Okay, and I'm gonna make sure that I don't have anything wrong. It's loud, very, the messages that we received, that we heard tonight, very loud and clear. opposing the stadium, and a lot of school pride. People preferring to stay in to play in their own stadium. Athletes that would prefer to stay where they are now. What is planned currently? If you have a school that prefers to stay, what's in place? What does that look like? What will that look like? And I'm sorry, I'm looking at you, Jason, and maybe I shouldn't be looking at you. So I'm not saying you need to respond, but I should be looking at everyone.
That's fine.
Dr. Ahern, I'm sorry.
No, I can appreciate that. I think, really, first and foremost, I think our plan is to build a premier stadium that students want to participate and be at. And so, we certainly appreciate, and I want to acknowledge that, we will still utilize our other stadiums. And so, I think the real beauty and the real opportunity in our district is that right now, 50% of our high school students are participating in athletic and/or activity. 65% of our middle school students. That number continues to grow in elementary. It would be wonderful if everybody can fit into that stadium, but that's not doable. And so we fully expect that there'll be some opportunities and things that we'll have to consider as we look at and review scheduling and consider, where is it that we might have to be a little more flexible and understanding, what's available. Having said that, that stadium will probably be busy 5 to 6 nights a week. And so we want to work with the schools. We want to work with our students. We hear their voices. At the same time, we want to give them the opportunity also to be in those stadiums and have those type of experiences that they may or may not be having right now.
Yeah, I would also say that as part of the athletic facilities committee work, we're, as Jason stated earlier in an earlier response, we're really trying to think more district wide, but also give the flexibility of individual campuses to make informed recommendations about what will best serve their particular student body. Participation rates by sport vary pretty dramatically from school to school. And so what's really important to one school is not as important perhaps to another school, and vice versa. We have shared programming in a number of sports, both interdistrict and intradistrict. And what I would like to see is that shared programming, if that's the best way forward, moving forward, is all within DMPS. So, ultimately, hopefully, we'll be seeing, if you will, centers of excellence developed campus by campus based on needs of the district more broadly, but specifically for that campus, and with the potential of additional shared facilities moving forward that might be located either on current district property or at an existing campus. We can't have top of class facilities for every sport times 5. It's just not financially feasible. So if we can think more strategically about what are the needs of Hoover versus what are the needs of North versus what are the needs of Lincoln and Roosevelt and East, I think we get closer to having really high quality facilities, not just for competition, but almost more importantly for practice and training across the district, especially as we continue to build the numbers of students that are actively engaged in these activities. And I don't know if you want to highlight any of that, Jason, but that's really where the vision is for moving forward.
I don't know that I have any specific questions, but I just want to thank Jason and Dave and Tom and everyone else who's had anything to do with putting together tonight's presentation. But even beyond that, all of the work that's really gone into getting us to this point. I can remember the early conversations on this project. I'm probably one of the few that was around when this started. You were here. You were here. But I have to tell you that I started out reticent, and over time I've gotten not only more enthused, but have really become an advocate for this project. You know, we talk about whether or not it's the right project at the right time, and I believe it is, but it's not only one project, it's multiple projects, and it's investments across the district in our activities, facilities that we've not really taken the time to do. Over the past 20 years, we've invested over $600 million in our school buildings, haven't invested much in our activities and athletics. And at the same time, every other district around us has taken their saved dollars and invested in athletic facilities, leaving us behind and not allowing our students the opportunity to engage in athletics in facilities that merit not only their participation, but also merit the value of their participation. So I would like to, if we are ready, advance a motion for the board to accept the bids for the DMPS Community Stadium.
We have a motion by Ms. Caldwell Johnson. Can I get a second?
Sawyer, second.
We have a motion by Ms. Caldwell Johnson and a second by Ms. Sawyer. Ms. Rivera, could you please take the vote?
Ms. Alonso Diaz,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
Can't get off mute. Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Martorana,
No.
Ms. Sawyer,
Yes.
The vote is approved 5-0. I'd like to thank you all for taking part in our special board meeting. This meeting, I'm sorry, 5-1, excuse me. That was, vote is approved. It's 5-1. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening for our special board meeting. This meeting is adjourned at 6:44. We will be going into our work session for fiscal year 23 budget shortly.